She thought I'd drown. Instead, I learned to swim with sharks.
The phone buzzed at 2:47 a.m., cutting through the humid Florida night like a knife through butter. I stared at the ceiling fans spinning lazily overhead, counting the rotations like sheep I couldn't catch. Sleep had become a stranger since Lila started her extended work cruise 3 weeks ago. Funny how a marriage bed feels bigger when you're the only one sweating in it. The notification light blinked insistently on my nightstand. Another work emergency, probably. Being Nick Carver, owner of Carver Construction, meant my phone never truly slept. But something about this particular buzz felt different, heavier, like thunder before lightning strikes. I grabbed the phone, squinting at the screen. Unknown number. The message preview made my blood freeze. Thought you should see what your wife's really doing on that cruise. Check the attachment. My thumb hovered over the message for what felt like an eternity. In that moment, suspended between ignorance and knowledge, I could still pretend everything was fine. That Lila's sudden enthusiasm for corporate team-building retreats was legitimate. That her new workout routine and designer lingerie purchases were just coincidental self-improvement. I opened the message. The video was short, maybe 30 seconds, but it contained a lifetime of betrayal. There was my wife of 8 years, Lila Carver, stepping onto what looked like a luxury yacht. She wasn't alone. The man's hand on the small of her back belonged to Chase Banner, VP of Operations at Oceanic Cruise Lines. The same Chase Banner who'd been to our house for dinner parties. The same Chase Banner who'd shaken my hand and complimented my bourbon selection while apparently planning to screw my wife. But it was the second video that really twisted the knife. Lila and Chase in what appeared to be a hotel room, her engagement ring, my grandmother's engagement ring, sitting on the nightstand while she whispered something that made him laugh. The timestamp showed yesterday. I set the phone down carefully, like it might explode. My hands weren't shaking, not yet. That would come later. Right now, I felt nothing but a cold, calculating calm settling over me, like morning fog over the Gulf. Well, that explains her sudden love of SPF 50, I muttered to the empty room. I padded barefoot to the kitchen, poured 3 fingers of bourbon, the good stuff Chase had complimented, and sat at the granite island Lila had insisted we needed. The house felt different now, like a crime scene before the tape goes up. Every surface held new meaning. The refrigerator covered in photos of our happy marriage. The calendar with her cruise dates marked in pink highlighter. The stack of mail I'd been dutifully collecting, including what looked like credit card statements I'd never seen before. That's when the real investigation began. I started with her home office, a pristine space that always felt more like a showroom than a workspace. Lila was meticulous about organization, everything in its place, every file labeled and color-coded. But now I knew what to look for. The gaps, the inconsistencies, the carefully hidden secrets. The first discovery was a receipt tucked inside a book she'd never read. Eat, Pray, Love. How's that for irony? The receipt was from Victoria's Secret, dated 2 months ago. $237 for lingerie I'd never seen. Below that, a spa receipt for something called a Brazilian Paradise package. My wife had been preparing for this affair like it was a military operation. I kept digging. Hidden in her jewelry box, behind a false back I'd never noticed, I found a burner phone. The text history read like a romance novel written by someone with no imagination. Chase called her baby, she called him daddy. I nearly threw up right there on our Persian rug. But the real gut punch was the last exchange. Chase: can't wait for our 6 weeks together. This is it, baby. After this cruise, we tell everyone. Lila: I know, I'm ready. Just promise me you won't text Nick while we're gone. I want to be the one to tell him it's over. Chase: deal. Poor fool won't know what hit him. 6 weeks. They'd planned a 6-week affair cruise while I worked 16-hour days to pay for the life she was so eager to abandon. And the kicker? She wanted to be the one to deliver the news. How considerate. I found more evidence in her closet. A suitcase I'd never seen before, packed with clothes that cost more than most people's rent. A note tucked in the side pocket, written in her careful handwriting. Chase: by the time you read this, we'll be free. I can't wait to start our real life together. All my love, L. The bourbon was gone by the time I finished my investigation. Dawn was creeping through the blinds, painting everything in that sickly yellow light that makes even paradise look like a crime scene. I sat in my kitchen, surrounded by evidence of my wife's betrayal, and felt something I hadn't experienced since I was a kid getting picked on in the schoolyard. I felt underestimated. Chase Banner thought he was clever, stealing another man's wife while that man worked his A off to build something real. Lila thought she was smart, planning her exit strategy like some kind of corporate merger. They both thought Nick Carver, the blue-collar guy who got lucky in construction, would just roll over and take it. They were about to learn why that was a mistake. I walked to my bedroom, opened the safe, and pulled out my wedding ring. The gold felt heavier than usual, weighted down with 8 years of lies and broken promises. I set it on the kitchen counter next to a piece of paper where I wrote, "Lila, I know about Chase. I know about the cruise. I know about everything. By the time you read this, your things will be at your mother's house, and your lover will have learned what happens when you steal from Nick Carver. Hope you enjoyed the cruise. The sharks down there are nothing compared to the one you married. Nason." I left the note under the ring and walked out of the house that no longer felt like home. It was time to remind everyone why you don't mess with the underdog. Big Mike Torino was already at the construction site when I pulled up at 6:30 a.m., coffee in one hand and a bear claw in the other. Mike had been my foreman for 5 years, ever since I'd started Carver Construction, and he knew me well enough to read trouble in my face from 50 yards away. "Boss," he said, his Brooklyn accent thick as concrete. "You look like 10 miles of bad road. Everything okay?" "Define okay," I said, grabbing my hard hat from the truck. "Lila's been screwing Chase Banner from Oceanic Cruise Lines for at least 2 months. They're currently on what she told me was a work cruise, but is actually a 6-week fuckfest in the Caribbean." Mike nearly choked on his coffee. "Jesus, Nick, you sure about this?" I pulled out my phone and showed him one of the videos. Mike's face went through several expressions: surprise, anger, then something that looked like anticipation. "That piece of crap," he growled. "I never liked that guy. Too much hair gel and not enough backbone. What's the play, boss?" This was why I kept Mike around. No judgment, no pity, no suggestions that I work things out or try counseling. Just straight to business. "First, we need information. I want to know everything about Chase Banner. Where he lives, what he drives, where he drinks, who he owes money to, everything." "Consider it done. I got a cousin works security at the marina where all those cruise line executives keep their boats. What else?" "Second, call Rodriguez Moving. Tell them I need Lila's stuff out of my house and delivered to her mother's place by noon today. All of it. I want the bedroom stripped, the closets empty, even her stupid decorative pillows." Mike grinned. "Now we're talking. What about the legal stuff?" "Already handled. I called my lawyer at 5 a.m. Marisol's coming in today to help with documentation." Marisol Vega was my assistant, a sharp woman in her 40s who'd worked for 3 different law firms before deciding she preferred construction. She had an eye for detail that would make a forensic accountant jealous. "And the personal stuff?" Mike asked. "You want me to handle Banner?" "No violence, Mike. I mean it. This has to be smart, not stupid. We're going to destroy them, but we're going to do it legally and publicly. I want everyone in this town to know what they did." Mike looked disappointed, but nodded. "You're the boss, but if that changes, you'll be the first to know." By 10 a.m., I had a complete dossier on Chase Banner, courtesy of Mike's cousin Tony, and a few well-placed phone calls. Chase lived in a penthouse condo overlooking the Gulf, drove a custom Porsche 911, and had a reputation for being a player around town. More importantly, he owed serious money to some questionable people from his gambling habit, information that might prove useful later. Marisol arrived at 11 with a stack of legal documents and a laptop bag that looked like it could survive a nuclear war. "Nick," she said, settling into the chair across from my desk, "I'm sorry about Lila, but I have to ask. Are you sure you want to go this route? Divorce is messy enough without adding revenge to the mix." "This isn't revenge, Marisol. This is justice. There's a difference." She opened her laptop and pulled up several screens of information. "Okay, then let's do this right. I've been through your financial records, and the good news is that most of your assets are protected. The house is in your name only. The business is incorporated, and your personal accounts are separate from the joint checking. What about the bad news? The bad news is that she's going to try to take you for everything she can. I found some interesting charges on your credit cards. Looks like she's been planning this for months. Hotel rooms, expensive dinners, shopping sprees, all charged to your accounts." I felt that cold anger building again. "How much?" "About $15,000 in the last 3 months. All explainable as personal expenses if she's smart about it. She's not as smart as she thinks she is. What else?" Marisol pulled up another screen. "This is interesting. Chase Banner has been married twice before. Both divorces involved infidelity, his infidelity, and both ex-wives are still in the area. Now that was useful information. My phone rang. The caller ID showed Lila's mother, Patricia Whitman. I'd been expecting this call. Hello, Patricia. Nick, dear, there's been some kind of mistake. A moving truck just delivered all of Lila's belongings to my house. The men said you authorized it, but that can't be right. Patricia Whitman was old Florida money, the kind of woman who still wore pearls to the grocery store and thought work was something other people did. She'd never liked me. I was too rough around the edges for her precious daughter. But she'd tolerated me because I made good money and treated Lila well. It's not a mistake, Patricia. Lila's been having an affair with Chase Banner from her work. They're currently on a cruise together, planning their future while spending my money. I thought you should know before you hear it from someone else. The silence on the other end stretched for nearly 30 seconds. That's impossible, Nick. Lila would never... I have video evidence, Patricia, and text messages and receipts. Your daughter has been planning this for months. Another long silence. Then, in a voice I'd never heard from her before, what do you need me to do? That caught me off guard. Excuse me? Lila is my daughter, and I love her. But if what you're saying is true, then she's made her choice. The question is, what do you need from me? I looked at Marisol, who was listening with interest. Just keep her stuff safe. She's going to need it when she gets back. Of course, and Nick, I'm sorry. You deserve better. After I hung up, Marisol raised an eyebrow. That went better than expected. Patricia's old school. She doesn't approve of infidelity, even when it's her own daughter. Speaking of which, Mike said, appearing in the doorway, we got a problem. Tony just called from the marina. Banner's back early. His boat pulled in about an hour ago. I felt my pulse quicken. Both of them? Yeah, but here's the weird part. They came back on separate boats, and Tony says Lila looked pissed off about something. Interesting. Trouble in paradise already? Where are they now? Banner went to his condo. Lila's at the Marriott downtown. Separate rooms. Even more interesting. It looked like 6 weeks of concentrated time together had revealed some cracks in their perfect romance. Mike, I want you to take a ride over to Banner's building. Don't do anything, just watch. See who comes and goes. Marisol, can you find out why they came back early? Already on it, she said, fingers flying over her keyboard. I have a contact at the cruise line. Give me 20 minutes. I leaned back in my chair, processing this new information. They'd cut their romantic getaway short and weren't even staying together. Either they'd had a fight or something had spooked them. Either way, it was an opportunity. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at Flanagan's bar at 8 p.m. Come alone. Ellie. I showed the message to Marisol. She frowned. Could be a trap. Could be, but I doubt Lila's the trap-setting type. She's more of the dramatic confrontation type. You're still going? Absolutely, but not alone. I looked toward the door where Mike had disappeared. Mike's going to be there, just not obviously. Marisol's laptop chimed with an incoming email. She read it quickly, then looked up with a grim expression. I know why they came back early. The cruise line got an anonymous tip that one of their executives was using company resources for personal travel. They launched an internal investigation 3 days ago. Banner's been suspended pending review. Anonymous tip? I asked, though I was pretty sure I knew the answer. Yeah, came from someone with detailed information about Banner's activities. Photos, dates, credit card records. Whoever sent it knew exactly what they were doing. I smiled for the first time in days. Sounds like someone else has it out for Chase Banner. Or, Marisol said slowly, someone's already 3 steps ahead of us. That was a sobering thought. But as I sat there, surrounded by evidence of my wife's betrayal and planning my next move, I realized something important. I didn't care who else wanted to see Chase Banner burn. The more the merrier. Flanagan's bar was the kind of place where construction workers drank next to cruise ship executives, and nobody asked questions as long as your money was green. The lighting was dim enough to hide secrets and loud enough to cover conversations you didn't want overheard. Perfect for a confrontation 8 years in the making. I arrived at 7:45, early enough to scope the room and late enough to make Lila wait. Mike was already there, nursing a beer at the far end of the bar where he could watch the entrance. He caught my eye and nodded slightly. No sign of trouble yet. Lila walked in at exactly 8 p.m. because punctuality was one of those corporate habits she couldn't shake. She looked different, thinner, with new highlights in her hair, and a tan that probably cost more than most people's car payments. The cruise had been good to her, at least physically. She spotted me immediately and walked over with that confident stride I'd once found attractive. Now it just looked calculated. "Nick," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. "You look tired." "Funny thing about betrayal," I replied, signaling the waitress for 2 beers. "It keeps you up at night." She had the grace to look uncomfortable, but only for a moment. Then the corporate mask slipped back into place. "We need to talk about this like adults." "Adults don't screw around behind their spouse's back for 6 months, Lila. Adults have conversations about unhappy marriages before they start shopping for new partners." The waitress brought our drinks. Lila waited until she was gone before responding. "You're right. I should have talked to you first. But honestly, Nick, when was the last time we really talked? When was the last time you came home before 9 p.m.? When was the last time you asked me about my day, my dreams, my feelings?" It was a well-rehearsed speech, probably practiced in front of Chase Banner during their romantic cruise. The sufferer blaming approach, classic Lila. "So this is my fault?" I asked. "I worked too much to build the life you wanted, so you decided to find someone who'd already built his..." "That's not fair." "Fair?" I laughed, loud enough that a few people turned to look. "You want to talk about fair? Let's talk about the $15,000 you spent on your affair. Let's talk about using our credit cards to buy lingerie for another man. Let's talk about the burner phone hidden in your jewelry box." Her face went pale. "You went through my things?" "I went through our things, in our house, that I pay for." I leaned forward. "Here's what's going to happen, Lila. You're going to sign whatever divorce papers my lawyer puts in front of you. You're going to take your crap from your mother's house and disappear from my life. And in exchange, I won't destroy you publicly." "You can't threaten me, Nick." "I'm not threatening you. I'm offering you a choice, the easy way or the hard way." She took a long drink of her beer, and I could see her calculating. This was Lila at her most dangerous when she was thinking strategically. "What about Chase?" she asked finally. "What about him?" "Are you going to do something to him?" I smiled. "Chase Banner is going to get exactly what he deserves. No more, no less. Nick, please, I know you're angry, but..." "Angry?" I interrupted. "Lila, I'm not angry. I'm disappointed. I'm disgusted, but I'm not angry anymore. Anger is an emotion, and emotions are for people who matter to me. You don't matter to me anymore." That hit her harder than any insult could have. I saw it in her eyes, the realization that she'd burned a bridge she couldn't rebuild. "Fine," she said, standing up. "But don't think this is over. I have rights. I have lawyers." "You have nothing," I said calmly. "Your boyfriend is suspended from his job pending an investigation into misuse of company resources. Your mother knows about the affair. Your friends are going to find out soon enough, and your lawyers are going to tell you the same thing mine told me. Infidelity matters in Florida divorce court." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to figure out how I'd gotten so much information so quickly. Finally, she grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "This isn't over, Nick," she called back. "Yes, it is," I replied. But she was already gone. Mike appeared at my table 30 seconds later. That looked fun. She's scared. Good. Scared people make mistakes. Speaking of mistakes, you might want to see this. He handed me his phone, which was displaying a social media post. The photo showed Lila and Chase at what looked like a fancy restaurant, with the caption, "When you find your soulmate, nothing else matters. #new beginnings, #true love, #living my best life." The post was from Monica Reeves, Lila's best friend and partner in crime. It was dated 3 days ago. "Interesting timing," I said, right before they got called back from their cruise. "Gets better. Look at the comments." I scrolled down and saw dozens of responses, most from people who knew Lila was married. The comments ranged from confused to congratulatory to outright accusatory. Someone named Jennifer had written, "Isn't Lila married to Nick Carver?" Monica had responded, "It's complicated. Sometimes you have to follow your heart." "Well," I said, handing the phone back to Mike, "looks like they've already started the public humiliation phase themselves." "What's next, boss?" I thought about that. Lila was clearly planning to fight, which meant she'd probably try to rally her friends and maybe even attempt some kind of counterattack. Chase was suspended and probably desperate. And somewhere out there was the person who'd sent that anonymous tip to the cruise line. Someone with their own agenda. Next, we let them make the first move. Desperate people do stupid things, and I want to be ready when they do. But as I walked out of Flanagan's bar that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something important. The anonymous tip, the early return from the cruise, the separate hotel rooms. It all felt like pieces of a puzzle I couldn't quite see yet. I was about to find out that some puzzles have more pieces than you expect. The next morning brought two surprises. The first was a phone call from Jennifer Morrison, someone I barely knew but who apparently knew plenty about me. "Mr. Carver, this is Jenny Morrison. I work at Oceanic Cruise Lines in accounting. I think we need to talk." Jennifer turned out to be a soft-spoken woman in her 30s who'd been working at the cruise line for 8 years. We met at a coffee shop near the port, far enough from both our workplaces to avoid unwanted attention. "I saw Monica's post on social media," she said, stirring her latte nervously, "about your wife and Mr. Banner, and I thought you should know some things." "I'm listening." "This isn't Chase's first affair with a married woman. There was Sarah Martinez 2 years ago. Her husband worked for one of our contractors. And before that, Lisa Chen, whose husband was in our IT department. Both marriages ended badly." "What happened to the husbands?" "Sarah's husband, Tom, tried to fight it. Made a big scene at the company Christmas party. Threatened Chase, got himself arrested. Lost his contract with us, lost his business, lost everything. Lisa's husband just disappeared. Moved away, I think. Never saw him again." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. "And Chase faced no consequences?" "None. He's very careful about how he handles these things. Makes the women think they're special, that he's going to leave his life for them. But he never does. Eventually they get tired of being the other woman and move on. Or their husbands find out and cause trouble." "What makes you think this time is different?" Jennifer hesitated. "Because this time, he actually got caught. The anonymous tip that got him suspended? It came with documentation that could only have come from someone with access to company records, someone who knew exactly what to look for and how to present it." "Someone inside the company?" "Has to be. And Mr. Carver, I don't think Chase knows who sent it. He's been paranoid for days, looking over his shoulder, asking weird questions about computer access and security protocols." This was getting more interesting by the minute. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Tom Martinez was a good man who got destroyed by Chase Banner's games. And because I think you're smarter than Tom was. You're not going to make the same mistakes." After Jennifer left, I sat in the coffee shop processing this new information. Chase Banner was a serial hunter who'd been using his position to destroy marriages for years. And now someone with inside knowledge was targeting him specifically. The question was, who? I was still thinking about it when my phone rang. Mike's voice was tight with excitement. "Boss, you need to get down to Banner's condo building. Something's happening." I found Mike parked across the street from Chase's building, watching through binoculars as what looked like a small crowd gathered in the lobby. "What's the situation?" 3 guys in suits showed up about an hour ago. Looked like lawyers or investigators. Then about 20 minutes ago, 2 women arrived. One of them looked really pissed off. He handed me the binoculars. Through the glass doors of the lobby, I could see Chase Banner in what appeared to be a heated argument with a blonde woman I didn't recognize. The suits were standing nearby, taking notes. "Any idea who the women are?" "Working on it, but Tony from the marina called. Says one of them was asking questions about Banner's boat yesterday. Wanted to know about his passenger logs, maintenance records, that kind of thing." My phone buzzed with a text from Marisol. "Emergency? Come back to the office now." When I arrived at the construction site, Marisol was pacing behind her desk like a caged animal. She looked up when I walked in, and her expression was grim. "We have a problem. I just got off the phone with your lawyer. Lila filed a restraining order against you this morning." "What?" "She's claiming you threatened her at the bar last night. Says she's afraid for her safety." I sat down heavily. "That's BS, Marisol. Mike was there. He heard everything." "I know, but it gets worse. She's also filed for emergency spousal support and exclusive use of the marital home. She's claiming you kicked her out without cause and left her destitute." "She's staying at the Marriott. How is that destitute?" "Doesn't matter. The judge granted a temporary order. You can't go within 500 feet of her, and you have to pay her $3,000 a month until the divorce is finalized." I felt that cold anger building again. She planned this. The whole meeting last night was a setup. "Looks that way. But Nick, there's something else. Something weird." Marisol pulled up her computer and showed me a legal document. This is the restraining order petition. Look at the law firm that filed it. I read the letterhead. Brennan, Walsh, and Associates. Never heard of them. Neither had I, so I did some research. They're a boutique firm that specializes in high-conflict divorces. Very expensive, very aggressive. The kind of lawyers you hire when you want to destroy someone. So Lila upgraded her legal team. So what? So this firm was retained and paid for by someone else. The retainer check came from a company called Gulf Coast Consulting. I looked them up. It's a shell company registered in Delaware 3 months ago. 3 months ago. Right around the time Lila's affair started getting serious. Chase is funding her legal team? That's what I thought at first, but I dug deeper. Gulf Coast Consulting was funded by a wire transfer from another company, which was funded by another company. It's a chain of shell corporations designed to hide the real source of the money. How far back does it go? I'm still tracing it, but I found something interesting. One of the companies in the chain has the same registered agent as a company that owns a significant amount of oceanic cruise line stock. I stared at her. Someone with a financial interest in the cruise line is funding Lila's divorce attorney? It gets weirder. I also found out that Chase Banner has been borrowing money from some very unfriendly people. Gambling debts, mostly. He owes about $200,000 to a group that doesn't typically accept late payments. The pieces were starting to form a picture, but it was a picture I didn't like. Someone's playing a much bigger game than we realized. That's what I'm thinking. The question is, are we pawns or players? Before I could answer, Mike burst through the door. Boss, you're going to want to see this. He handed me his phone, which was displaying a local news website. The headline read, Cruise Line Executive Under Investigation for Embezzlement. The article was brief but damaging. Chase Banner, VP of Operations at Oceanic Cruise Lines, was being investigated for allegedly embezzling company funds to finance personal travel and entertainment. The investigation had been triggered by an anonymous tip containing detailed financial records. This just went live 20 minutes ago, Mike said. It's already being shared all over social media. I scrolled through the article, noting the specific details. This wasn't a generic news story. Someone had fed the reporter exact information, including amounts, dates, and methods. Information that could only have come from someone with access to both company records and Chase's personal financial information. Marisol, I said, I need you to find out everything you can about who owns stock in Oceanic Cruise Lines. Major shareholders, board members, anyone with serious money invested. Already on it? Give me an hour. As she worked, I sat in my office thinking about the chess game I'd apparently stumbled into. Someone was orchestrating a very sophisticated takedown of Chase Banner, and they were using Lila's affair as one of their weapons. The question was whether they saw me as an ally or an obstacle. My phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Nick Carver. Mr. Carver, this is Sarah Martinez. I think we need to talk. Sarah Martinez. The woman Jennifer had mentioned, one of Chase Banner's previous sufferers. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Can you meet me tonight? I have information you need to hear. Information about Chase Banner and what he's really been doing. We arranged to meet at a restaurant in the next town over, far from anyone who might recognize either of us. As I hung up, I realized that the simple revenge story I'd planned was becoming something much more complex and much more dangerous. Sarah Martinez was not what I expected. Instead of the broken sufferer Jennifer had described, I found myself sitting across from a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who radiated controlled intelligence. She'd chosen a corner booth in a restaurant where we could talk without being overheard. Thank you for meeting me, she said, sliding a manila folder across the table. I've been waiting 2 years for someone like you to come along. Someone like me? Someone with the resources and motivation to take Chase Banner down properly. She opened the folder to reveal photographs, documents, and what looked like financial records. My husband Tom wasn't the first man Chase destroyed, and he won't be the last, unless we stop him. I studied the documents, bank records, hotel receipts, credit card statements, all showing a pattern of Chase using company resources to fund his affairs. How did you get all this? I work for a private investigation firm now, started there after Tom lost his business. Turns out I have a talent for digging up dirt on cheating spouses. Her smile was cold. Chase Banner has been my special project for 2 years. The anonymous tip to the cruise line, that was you? That was me, along with the information I fed to that reporter today and the documentation I've been providing to his gambling creditors about his real financial situation. I leaned back, reassessing everything I thought I knew about the situation. You've been planning this for 2 years? Planning, researching, waiting for the right moment. Chase is careful, but he's also arrogant. He follows patterns, and patterns can be exploited. She pulled out another set of documents. For instance, did you know that he's been embezzling from the cruise line for 3 years? Small amounts, nothing that would trigger automatic audits, but it adds up. How much? About $400,000, all funneled through a series of fake vendor accounts and inflated expense reports. I have documentation going back to when he started. Why haven't you turned this over to the police? Because embezzlement is a white-collar crime, and Chase has connections. He'd get a slap on the wrist and be back to destroying marriages within a year. But public humiliation, professional ruin, and pressure from his gambling creditors, that's permanent. I was beginning to understand the scope of what Sarah had orchestrated. The shell company funding Lila's legal team, that's you too? Guilty. I wanted to make sure your wife had the best possible representation. The more aggressively she goes after you, the more public this whole mess becomes, and the more public it becomes, the more scrutiny Chase faces. You're using my divorce as a weapon against Chase. I'm using Chase's pattern of behavior against him. Your wife chose to have an affair with a known hunter. I'm just making sure there are consequences. It was brilliant and ruthless, and I found myself admiring Sarah's long-term thinking, even as I resented being manipulated. What about the other woman Jennifer mentioned? Lisa Chen? Sarah's expression darkened. Lisa's story is more complicated and more tragic. She pulled out a newspaper clipping from 3 years ago. The headline read, "Local businessman dies in apparent self-destruction." The photo showed a man in his 30s, smiling at what looked like a company picnic. The caption identified him as David Chen, owner of Chen Technologies. David didn't just disappear, Sarah said quietly. He eliminated himself. Left a note saying he couldn't live with the shame of what his wife had done. Lisa found his body. I felt sick. Chase drove a man to self-destruction? Chase destroyed David's marriage, his business relationships, and his reputation. David was a proud man who couldn't handle being seen as a betrayed, so he took what he thought was the only way out. Where's Lisa now? That's the interesting part. Lisa Chen is now Lisa Banner. She married Chase 6 months after her husband's funeral. The room seemed to spin. Chase married one of his affair partners? Married her and gained control of her late husband's technology company. Very convenient for a man with gambling debts and embezzlement problems. I stared at the documents spread across the table, finally seeing the full picture. Chase Banner wasn't just a serial cheater. He was a hunter who targeted married women specifically, destroyed their marriages, and then either discarded them or absorbed their assets. How many others have there been? That I can document? 7 over the past 5 years? All married women, all with wealthy husbands, all ending the same way. Either the husband gets destroyed and disappears, or the marriage ends with Chase profiting somehow. And the cruise line just looks the other way? The cruise line doesn't know the full extent of it. Chase is very good at compartmentalizing his activities, but that's about to change. Sarah smiled grimly. Because tomorrow morning, every major shareholder in Oceanic Cruise Lines is going to receive a comprehensive report detailing Chase Banner's activities and their potential liability exposure. What kind of liability? Sexual maltreatment lawsuits from the women he's manipulated, fraud charges related to his embezzlement, civil suits from the families he's destroyed, and most importantly, a wrongful death suit from Lisa Chen Banner, who's recently discovered some very interesting information about her current husband's role in her first husband's passing. My head was spinning. Lisa is turning on Chase? Lisa never loved Chase. She married him to get close enough to destroy him. Turns out she's been gathering evidence for 3 years, waiting for the right moment to strike. Your wife's affair just provided the perfect opportunity. I sat back, overwhelmed by the complexity of what Sarah had revealed. What I thought was a simple case of infidelity was actually part of a much larger pattern of carnivory behavior. And what I'd planned as straightforward revenge had become part of an elaborate conspiracy involving multiple sufferers and millions of dollars. What do you need from me? I asked finally. Just keep being yourself. Keep fighting the divorce. Keep making noise. Keep drawing attention to Chase's behavior. The more public this gets, the harder it becomes for anyone to cover it up. And what happens to Lila in all this? Sarah's expression softened slightly. Your wife is a sufferer too, Nick. She's just too blind to see it yet. Chase targeted her specifically because she was married to a successful man. He never intended to build a life with her. He intended to use her to get to your assets. The restraining order, the spousal support, that's all part of his plan. Think about it. If Lila gets half your assets in the divorce and she's planning to marry Chase, then Chase gets access to your money. It's the same pattern he's used before. I felt a surge of anger, but not at Lila this time. At Chase Banner for manipulating my wife into destroying our marriage for his financial benefit, and at myself for not seeing it sooner. There's something else, Sarah said, pulling out one final document. Chase has been borrowing against his expected windfall from your divorce. He owes money to people who don't accept excuses, and he's been telling them that he'll be able to pay once he marries your wife. How much does he owe? Last count? About $600,000? And these aren't the kind of creditors who accept payment plans. As I drove home that night, my head was full of Sarah's revelations. The simple revenge I'd planned had become something much more complex and dangerous, but it had also become something more important. A chance to stop a hunter who had been destroying lives for years. The question was, what was I willing to risk to see it through? The next morning brought chaos in 3 different flavors. The first was a phone call from my lawyer at 6:30 a.m. Nick, we have a problem. Lila's legal team filed an emergency motion claiming you've been violating the restraining order. They have photos of you at locations they say constitute stalking behavior. That's impossible. I haven't been anywhere near her. The photos show you at the marina, at the coffee shop near the cruise line offices, and at that restaurant in Clearwater. They're claiming you've been following her. I realized with growing anger that someone had been watching me while I was investigating Chase. Those photos are from my own activities. I wasn't following Lila. I didn't even know she was at those places. Doesn't matter. The judge is considering revoking your bail and holding you in contempt. We have a hearing at 2 p.m. today. The second call came from Mike at 7:15 a.m. Boss, we got big problems at the construction site. Someone broke in last night and trashed your office. Computers are gone. Filing cabinets emptied. Safe cracked open. I was dressed and in my truck within 5 minutes. The damage to my office was extensive and professional. Whoever had done this knew exactly what they were looking for. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd assumed all my important files were kept on site. Marisol, I called. Please tell me you backed up everything to the cloud server. Of course, she replied, surveying the damage. But Nick, this wasn't random. They knew where to look for specific documents. Financial records, client files, legal correspondence, all the stuff someone would need to build a case against you. Or to find leverage to use against me. The third crisis arrived in the form of Jennifer Morrison, who showed up at the construction site looking terrified. Mr. Carver, I'm sorry to bother you, but I think I made a mistake talking to you yesterday. What kind of mistake? Someone at work has been asking questions about me. About who I've been talking to. What I know about Mr. Banner's activities. And this morning, I found this on my car. She handed me a piece of paper with a simple message. Keep your mouth shut, or lose your job. I looked at the note, then at Jennifer's frightened face. Do you have somewhere safe you can stay for a few days? I don't know. Maybe my sister's place in Tampa? Go there, today, and don't tell anyone at work where you're going. After Jennifer left, I sat in my destroyed office trying to piece together what was happening. Someone was escalating the situation rapidly, using multiple pressure points to squeeze me from all directions. The restraining order violation, the break-in, the threats to Jennifer, it all felt coordinated. My phone rang. Sarah Martinez. Nick, we need to meet. Something's gone wrong. We met at a different restaurant, and Sarah looked as rattled as I felt. Lisa Banner is dead, she said without preamble. What? Car accident last night. Ran off the road into a canal. Police are calling it an accident, but the timing is awfully convenient. I felt a chill run down my spine. You think Chase eliminated her? I think Lisa was about to expose Chase's role in her first husband's passing, and now she's conveniently dead before she could testify. What do you think? I think we're in over our heads. Sarah nodded grimly. It gets worse. Someone broke into my office last night, too. Stole all my files on Chase Banner. 3 years of investigation, gone. The same people who hit my office? Has to be. But here's the thing. I'm not the only one who had copies of that information. I sent everything to Lisa Banner weeks ago, and she was supposed to turn it over to the FBI. Was supposed to? I called her yesterday to confirm, and she said she was waiting for one more piece of evidence, something that would make the case ironclad. She was supposed to meet with federal agents today. Instead, she was dead. Sarah, I think we need to go to the police. With what? Suspicions? Theories? We don't have any proof that Chase is behind Lisa's end or the break-ins. And without the documentation that was stolen, we can't even prove the embezzlement. She was right, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were running out of time. What about the other evidence? The stuff you sent to the shareholders? That went out this morning, right before I heard about Lisa. But it's mostly financial analysis and pattern documentation. Damaging to Chase's career, but not enough to put him in prison. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop digging or join Lisa Banner. Your choice. I showed it to Sarah, who went pale. They're not playing games anymore, she said. No, they're not. Which means we need to change tactics. What do you mean? I mean, we stop playing defense and go on the attack. We force Chase into the open where he can't hide behind lawyers and shell companies. How? I thought about everything I learned over the past few days. Chase Banner was a hunter who used his position to destroy marriages and steal assets. He was also a man with serious gambling debts and a history of escalating violence when cornered. Most importantly, he was arrogant enough to think he was untouchable. We give him what he wants, I said finally. I don't understand. Chase thinks he's going to get my money through Lila. He's borrowed against that expectation, made promises to dangerous people, built his whole financial house of cards on the assumption that he'll be able to pay his debts once he marries my wife. So we let him think he's won. We let him get overconfident, and then we pull the rug out from under him in the most public way possible. Sarah stared at me. That's incredibly risky. If something goes wrong, if we do nothing, more people are going to die. Lisa Banner is dead because she tried to expose Chase quietly. Jennifer Morrison is running scared because she tried to help me. How many more sufferers are we willing to sacrifice while we build a perfect case? She was quiet for a long moment. Then, what do you need me to do? I need you to contact every one of Chase's previous sufferers, the ones who are still alive. I want them all in one room, ready to tell their stories to anyone who will listen. And then we throw the biggest, most public confrontation this town has ever seen. We make it impossible for anyone to ignore what Chase Banner has been doing. And we make sure he can't hurt anyone else. As I drove back to the construction site, I thought about the risks of what I was planning. Chase Banner had already shown he was willing to eliminate to protect his secrets. But he'd also shown that he was getting sloppy, making mistakes, leaving evidence. The question was, could I force him to make one final, fatal mistake before he eliminated again? I was about to find out. The hearing that afternoon was a disaster, but a controlled one. Lila's lawyers presented their evidence of my alleged stalking with theatrical precision, complete with enlarged photographs and a timeline that made me look like an obsessed ex-husband. My lawyer did his best, but the photos were real, even if the interpretation was wrong. Judge Morrison, no relation to Jennifer, was an older woman with sharp eyes and no patience for domestic drama. "Mr. Carver," she said, "while I'm not convinced you were deliberately stalking your wife, the pattern of behavior shown in these photographs is concerning. I'm going to maintain the restraining order and add additional conditions. You are not to be within 1,000 feet of Mrs. Carver, her workplace, or any location where she might reasonably be expected to appear." "Your Honor," my lawyer interjected, "that effectively bans my client from half the city." "Then perhaps Mr. Carver should consider relocating temporarily. Court is adjourned." As we walked out of the courthouse, I could see Lila and Chase Banner standing near the entrance, clearly celebrating their victory. Chase looked smug and confident, like a man who thought he'd just checkmate his opponent. He had no idea he'd actually walked into a trap. I made sure to look defeated as I passed them, shoulders slumped, avoiding eye contact. I wanted Chase to think he'd broken me. "Nick," Lila called out as I reached my truck. "Wait." I turned, making sure my expression showed nothing but exhaustion. "I'm sorry it had to be like this," she said, though her tone suggested she wasn't sorry at all. "If you'd just been reasonable from the beginning." "You win, Lila," I said quietly. "I can't fight both of you in the legal system. Just make it quick, okay? I'm tired." I saw satisfaction flash in Chase's eyes. He thought he'd won. Perfect. That evening, I met with Sarah Martinez and 3 other women at a private dining room in a hotel outside the city. The other women were Chase Banner's previous sufferers: Jennifer Morrison, whom I'd already met, Carmen Rodriguez, whose husband had lost his restaurant after Chase destroyed their marriage, and Patricia Walsh, whose husband had suffered a heart attack during their divorce proceedings. Ladies, I said, I want to be clear about what I'm asking. What we're planning is going to be public, messy, and potentially dangerous. Chase Banner has already shown he's willing to eliminate to protect his secrets. If any of you want to walk away, now is the time. None of them moved. Good. Here's what we're going to do. I laid out my plan. It was simple in concept, but complex in execution. We were going to force Chase into a public confrontation where he couldn't hide behind lawyers or corporate structure. We were going to make him reveal his true nature in front of witnesses, cameras, and law enforcement. The key, I explained, is making Chase think he's in control while actually controlling every aspect of the situation ourselves. How do we do that? Carmen asked. We give him exactly what he wants, a chance to humiliate me publicly while securing his financial future. We're going to throw a party. Sarah raised an eyebrow. A party? A divorce party. Lila's been telling everyone that she's finally free from her oppressive husband. So let's celebrate that freedom. Big party, lots of witnesses, plenty of cameras. And we're going to invite everyone who's ever been hurt by Chase Banner. He'll never show up if he knows it's a trap, Patricia pointed out. He won't know it's a trap. As far as Chase knows, this is Lila's idea. A celebration of their victory over the stupid construction worker who thought he could fight them. I pulled out my phone and showed them a text conversation I'd been having with Monica Reeves, Lila's best friend. Monica thought she was helping plan a surprise celebration for Lila's successful divorce proceedings. She had no idea she was actually helping me orchestrate Chase Banner's public destruction. Monica's been feeding me information about Chase and Lila's plans for weeks, I explained. She thinks she's being clever, playing both sides. She has no idea I know exactly what she's doing. What about evidence? Jennifer asked. We still don't have proof of the embezzlement or the other crimes. Sarah smiled for the first time all week. Actually, we do. Lisa Banner wasn't as careless as we thought. Before she died, she uploaded everything to a secure server with instructions to release it all if anything happened to her. Her lawyer contacted me this morning. She pulled out a tablet and showed us a file directory containing hundreds of documents: bank records, email communications, audio recordings, video surveillance, 3 years of evidence documenting Chase Banner's criminal activities. Lisa was thorough, Sarah said. She has Chase confessing to embezzlement, discussing his plans to homicide her first husband, even bragging about his ability to manipulate married women. It's all here. Then why do we need the party? Carmen asked. Why not just turn this over to the police? Because Chase has connections, money, and lawyers, I replied. Evidence can be suppressed, witnesses can be intimidated, cases can be delayed for years. But public humiliation? That's immediate and permanent. Once everyone in this town sees Chase Banner for what he really is, no amount of legal maneuvering can restore his reputation. And if he tries to run? He can't. His gambling debts are due next week. If he doesn't pay, his creditors will find him wherever he goes. His only option is to go through with marrying Lila and gaining access to my assets through the divorce settlement. Which he won't get if we expose him first, Patricia said, understanding the strategy. Exactly. We're going to destroy his reputation, his career, and his financial prospects all at the same time. And we're going to do it in front of an audience that includes law enforcement, media, and his own creditors. The plan was risky, but it was also comprehensive. We spent the next 2 hours working out details, timing, and contingencies. By the time we finished, I was confident we could pull it off. As the meeting broke up, Sarah pulled me aside. Nick, there's something else you should know. About Lila. What about her? I think she's starting to figure out that Chase isn't what he pretended to be. Monica mentioned that they've been fighting more, that Lila's been asking questions about Chase's finances and his previous relationships. You think she might be willing to testify against him? I think she might be willing to save herself if she realizes she's been played. The question is, are you prepared for that possibility? I thought about it. Despite everything Lila had done, part of me still remembered the woman I'd married 8 years ago. If she was truly a sufferer of Chase's manipulation, did she deserve the same fate as her hunter? If she's genuinely willing to make things right, I said finally, I'm willing to listen. But Sarah, she's going to have to prove it. Words aren't enough anymore. As I drove home that night, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Hope. Not hope for reconciliation, that ship had sailed, but hope for justice. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I was in control of the situation instead of just reacting to it. Chase Banner had spent years destroying lives and escaping consequences, but his luck was about to run out. The trap was set. Now all we had to do was spring it. The party was scheduled for Saturday night at the Marina Club, an upscale venue overlooking the Gulf where Lila had always dreamed of hosting events. Monica had done an excellent job selling the concept to Lila as a liberation celebration, a chance for Lila to show everyone that she was moving on to a better life with a better man. What Monica didn't know was that I'd been orchestrating every detail of the event through carefully planted suggestions and strategic manipulation of her social media-obsessed mind. The guest list included not just Lila's friends and Chase's colleagues, but also local business leaders, media representatives, and, most importantly, Detective Ray Castellanos, who'd been investigating Lisa Banner's suspicious passing. By Friday afternoon, everything was in place. Sarah Martinez had positioned her evidence in multiple secure locations, with instructions to release everything simultaneously if our plan failed. Jennifer Morrison had taken vacation time and was staying with her sister, but she'd agreed to return for the party as a surprise guest. Carmen Rodriguez and Patricia Walsh were ready with their testimonies, and Carmen's ex-husband had agreed to attend, despite his reluctance to relive painful memories. The only wild card was Lila herself. I was reviewing final preparations when Marisol knocked on my temporary office door. Since the break-in, we'd been working out of a rented space across town. "Nick, you have a visitor. She says it's urgent." Lila walked in looking nothing like the confident woman I'd seen at the courthouse. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, and her hands were shaking. "We need to talk," she said, closing the door behind her. "Lila, you know I can't be within 1,000 feet of you. If someone sees, I don't care about the restraining order. I care about staying alive." That got my attention. "What are you talking about?" She sat down across from my desk and pulled out her phone. "Chase has been getting strange phone calls. Men with accents, asking about money he owes them. And yesterday, someone broke into his condo while we were out. Nothing was stolen, but they left a message." She showed me a photo of Chase's bathroom mirror with a message written in what looked like red lipstick. "Pay up or else." "How much does he owe?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "More than he has. More than he can get. Nick, I think he's been lying to me about everything. His job, his money, his feelings for me. I think he's been using me." I studied my wife's face, looking for signs of deception. What I saw instead was genuine fear and dawning realization. "What do you want from me, Lila?" "I want to know the truth. All of it. Who is Chase Banner, really?" I made a decision that could have ruined everything. I pulled out Sarah Martinez's tablet and showed Lila the evidence Lisa Banner had compiled. Bank records showing Chase's embezzlement, audio recordings of him discussing his manipulation tactics, video surveillance of him meeting with loan sharks and promising to pay his debts with money he'd steal from me through our divorce. Lila watched in silence, her face growing paler with each revelation. When the recordings reached the part where Chase discussed his plans for eliminating problematic husbands, she started crying. "Oh God, Nick, what have I done? You fell for a professional con man who's been perfecting his technique for years. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" She wiped her eyes and looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen since the early days of our marriage, vulnerability mixed with determination. "I'll do whatever it takes to stop him, but Nick, I need you to know something. I never stopped loving you. I was just lost, unhappy, and Chase made me feel special, important, like I mattered." "You always mattered, Lila. I just got so caught up in building our future that I forgot to pay attention to our present. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was understanding. And right now, understanding was enough." "There's something else," Lila said. "Chase has been planning something for tomorrow night. He thinks the party is going to be his big victory celebration, but he's also been making arrangements to leave the country immediately afterward. He has tickets to the Cayman Islands under a false name. He's planning to run. He's planning to disappear with whatever money he can steal from our divorce settlement. He's been pressuring me to sign papers that would give him power of attorney over my assets. This changed everything. If Chase fled the country before we could expose him, he'd escape justice and probably continue his carnivory behavior elsewhere. Lila, I need you to do something incredibly difficult and incredibly dangerous. What? I need you to go to that party tomorrow night and pretend everything is normal. Let Chase think his plan is working. And when the time comes, I need you to help us trap him. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, will you be there? I'll be there, but Lila, you need to understand. Once we spring this trap, there's no going back. Chase is going to be destroyed, and anyone associated with him is going to face consequences. Your reputation, your career, your relationships, everything is going to change. My reputation is already ruined. My career is probably over anyway. And my relationships? She looked around the office, then back at me. The only relationship that ever really mattered is sitting right here. Saturday night arrived with all the drama of a Florida thunderstorm. The Marina Club was packed with guests who had no idea they were about to witness the destruction of a serial hunter. Chase Banner worked the room like the consummate politician he'd always been, shaking hands, telling jokes, accepting congratulations on his upcoming marriage to the lovely Lila. I watched from a distance, using surveillance equipment Sarah had provided to monitor the situation. Detective Castellanos was positioned near the bar, posing as an off-duty guest but actually recording everything with a hidden camera. Sarah Martinez and the other sufferers were scattered throughout the crowd, ready to move when I gave the signal. At 9 p.m., Monica Reeves called for everyone's attention. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here tonight to celebrate Lila's freedom and her new beginning with the wonderful Chase Banner. The crowd applauded. Chase beamed. Lila smiled, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. And now, Monica continued, Lila has a special announcement. This was it, the moment of truth. Lila stepped forward, took the microphone, and looked directly at Chase. You're right, Monica. I do have a special announcement, but it's not what you think. Chase's smile faltered. I want everyone here to know the truth about the man I almost married. Chase Banner is a hunter, a thief, and a butcher. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Chase lunged for the microphone, but Detective Castellanos was already moving. Ladies and gentlemen, Lila continued, her voice growing stronger, I have evidence that Chase Banner has been embezzling from his company, destroying marriages for financial gain, and eliminating anyone who threatens to expose him. Sarah Martinez stepped forward with her tablet. I have documentation of 7 previous affairs, 4 destroyed marriages, 2 suspicious ends, and over $500,000 in stolen funds. Chase tried to run, but found his path blocked by Carmen Rodriguez and Patricia Walsh. Remember me, Chase? Carmen said. You destroyed my marriage and my husband's business. Tonight, we return the favor. The party had become a courtroom, with Chase Banner as the defendant and his sufferers as the prosecutors. Detective Castellanos arrested him on the spot, while the assembled crowd, including several reporters, documented everything. As Chase was led away in handcuffs, he screamed threats and denials. But the evidence was overwhelming, the witnesses were credible, and his guilt was undeniable. Later, as the crowd dispersed and the police finished their interviews, Lila and I found ourselves alone on the club's deck overlooking the Gulf. What happens now? She asked. Now Chase goes to prison for a very long time. His sufferers get justice. And his creditors get nothing, which is probably justice of a different kind. I meant with us. I looked at my wife, my ex-wife, technically, and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. I don't know, Lila. We have a lot of damage to repair, a lot of trust to rebuild, but for the first time in a long time, I think we might have a chance. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I'd like that chance, Nick. I'd like it very much. As we stood there watching the waves crash against the marina, I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's building something better from the wreckage they leave behind. Chase Banner was finished. His sufferers had found justice. And maybe, just maybe, Lila and I had found our way back to each other. But that's a story for another day.